Every morning started the same. I'd wake up at 7, no earlier, no later, guided by an internal clock that had been reliable for years. I'd reach for the nightstand, tap my phone, not to check notifications, just to confirm the day had begun. Then I'd get up, pull on my old sweater, still carrying the scent of cedar wood from the closet, and open the front door. And there it was, as always, the thermos. Silver with a faded cafe logo from the avenue. Steam, I didn't ask questions. I accepted it as fact. Every day someone brought me coffee, and that someone was her. Mila Semyonovna died a year ago. There was a fire in her apartment early one January morning while I was still asleep. Another power surge, a space heater, old wiring, a lethal combination. I ran into the hallway in pajamas and socks, but the firefighters were already dousing the upper floors. I struggled to accept her death. She was part of my world. The idea that one could live in Soli. Mila Semyonovna had lived in the building about 10 years before I moved in. She must have been close to 60 then, though she looked younger. Always with a bun on her head, a floral shawl around her shoulders, and a shopping bag that she carried like it weighed nothing. I had just arrived, my first apartment, my first bills, remote work, and a silence that gnawed at me. We met on the landing. I was smoking, and she asked me, politely but firmly, not to smoke inside. Later, I began leaving small cartons of milk by her door. She responded with homemade pastries. Then one morning, without a word, the first thermos appeared. Black coffee, strong, with a hint of cardamom. I burned my lips but drank every drop. From then on, it became our ritual. She brewed. I drank. We rarely spoke. She seemed to avoid disturbing me, but her presence was always felt. Sometimes I'd hear her humming old-fashioned tunes to herself, with a kind of childlike joy. I'd picture her in her. Now those images come back sharper than the present. I see them as I sip the coffee and forget, for a moment, that she's gone. The doubt didn't come right away. At first I was just glad. How pleasant that memory could be, so fragrant, so ordinary. But as the days dragged on, a strange tension crept in. The coffee was always hot, as if placed just seconds before I opened the door. It was never lukewarm, never late, never missing. Always at 7. Exactly. I started to wonder. But one night, unable to stand it any longer, I placed a small camera across from my front door. Infrared, motion sensitive, recording every second. The next morning, the thermos was there. My hands trembled as I played the footage. My heart pounded like a drum. Nothing, just the empty hallway. Stillness. And then, 6:59, empty. 7 o'clock, the thermos, as if it simply appeared. No sound, no shadow, no steps. I couldn't stop. The thermos appearing out of nowhere didn't scare me. The next morning, I didn't touch the thermos. I just looked at it, standing on the mat. Then I picked it up and poured it down the sink. It was hot, and it smelled of cardamom. Then I heard a soft click, like a light switch. The silence around me seemed to tighten. And then came a humming emptiness, as if I'd pushed something invisible beyond its bounds. From that moment on, I knew. This wasn't a prank, and it wasn't human. I kept drinking the coffee, not because the electricity stabilized. My phone chimed and corrected the date. The pressure in my chest lifted. I drank the last of it and sat quietly, staring into the void. I realized this coffee wasn't just a beverage. It was an anchor. It kept me in this world, or kept something else near. I decided to talk to the other tenants. Not directly. I didn't want anyone thinking I'd lost it. But if anyone else had seen something strange, they might let it slip. I started wit. But everything changed when I spoke with Nikolai Ilyich, the night security guard. He'd been around forever, hardly slept, always watching the monitors. I joked, Mila Semyonovna hasn't come by for coffee, has she? He looked at me seriously. You know, he said, she sort of does. Cameras don't show anyone, but one button in the elevator is always pressed by morning. Yours. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the door with a cup of cold tea, staring at. At that moment, something inside me gave way. Not fear, a sense of knowing. I had become part of something larger, something inexplicable. And I no longer asked why. I wanted to understand for what. I couldn't just be a bystander anymore. If what I had seen was real, then there was a pattern, a rule, maybe even a reason. I pulled out an old key ring. Among them was a duplicate key to Mila's apartment, one she'd once given me, just in case. After her death, I shut the thermos and left the same way I came in. Back home, I placed it at my door, and in the morning it was full again, hot, with the smell of cardamom. I began to notice that after drinking the coffee, my days changed. Not just the electronics, it was my mind. My memory sharpened, thoughts became clear, as if the taste of the drink left a trace in my consciousness. I began writing. Notes, memories, odd phrases. Images came to mind that I'd never lived, but they felt. One day I found another note, beneath the thermos. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. You are alive as long as you remember. I am here as long as you are not alone. I read it over and over until I knew it by heart. And then I understood. This wasn't meant to scare. It was help. A quiet, stubborn defiance of forgetting. Mila couldn't leave as long as she knew I still needed her care, until I could care for myself. The mystery wasn't in the supernatural, it was in love, the kind that outlives. It ended quietly. One morning, just like any other, I woke up and opened the door. But the thermos was gone, the threshold was empty. Only the light from the window fell in a neat square onto the doormat. I waited a few minutes, looked through the peephole, down the hallway. Silence. No smell of coffee, no rustling, no disturbance in the air. Just a regular morning for the first time in a long time. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't disappointed. I simply sat on a stool and stared. The coffee was a little bitter, but warm.